Today we're taking Narrowboat Perseverance through the longest canal tunnel in the UK, and we're going to be deep underground for over 3 miles.
Get us off.
So...
Oh, tunnel light on my belly.
I know. Never lights are on.
Yeah.
Standage tunnel.
Standage tunnel, tunnel lights.
One of us wearing a life jacket.
One of us is prepared to walk with a dog. Rolls really hip her first.
I know, you're doing all the locks.
And I'm going over mountains.
Yeah.
And you're tunneling underneath things. Are you prepared for this though?
Not really, I haven't really been thinking about it. We've done this tunnel 3 times, we think. 2 in the other direction, once in this direction. Each time Michael's been on the boat, each time I've walked over the top. Today I'm going through the tunnel, Michael's going over the top with George.
Yeah.
George doesn't like tunnels. We think he might be okay because he's deaf now, but I don't really want to risk it.
She's never been through a tunnel like this. If you're piloting yourself, the main thing is don't hit anything. If someone else is piloting you, the main thing is just ignore when it hits things. It's no big deal. It's a long tunnel.
Yeah.
There is, at the far end towards Diggle, there's a long stretch in which you basically have to be sitting down because it's quite low. Other than that, it's fine.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are we doing? Hello, dog.
Good. So
sounds like we're ready to go.
we're ready to go. She's ready to go.
I'm not really. I'm a little bit worried about. I don't really have claustrophobia, but I might develop it. Like I've developed it in the Harecastle Tunnel before. Like not developed it, but like experienced a little bit of it.
Okay, we'll try not to do
It's
that.
like when you think that you're stuck, there's no way out.
There's 2 ways out. Beyond the 2 ways out, there's 4 railway tunnels, and this tunnel, which sort of acts as a sump as the other ones, has connections to all 4.
So you'll come and rescue me if there's any issues.
If all else fails, I will hero again.
For safety reasons, a companion vehicle will be tracking our progress through the tunnel. Before we can leave, that vehicle has to be driven across the hill to the far end of the tunnel, where it'll enter one of the disused railway tunnels and be driven back underground to where it's going to meet us at the first checkpoint inside the tunnels. I'll also have a volunteer chaperone on board to help guide me through the tunnel and keep everyone safe. We've had to book our passage in advance, and as there's limited spots made available each week, we feel quite lucky to have booked the last spot of the year. As well as having a chaperone on board, we'll also be joined by a chaperone in training, so it'll be quite crowded on Perseverance's little stern. I'm issued with a safety helmet and high-vis jacket, and the volunteers also load a box of safety equipment onto the boat. They place a powerful tunnel light onto our bow to help our little tunnel light the way. The tunnel's very narrow. In places it's barely 7 foot wide, so before you set off your boat gets measured to make sure it's going to fit. Boats over 6 foot 10 inches wide or over 70 foot long, or with an air draft of over 6 foot 2 inches or with a draft of over 3 foot are not allowed to attempt the passage. As Perseverance has made this trip before, she doesn't need to be measured this time. When the companion vehicle is finally in place, it's time for us to leave. Michael helps to untie the boat and we set off. This is the point of no return. We're going in. We're not going to see daylight until we emerge 3 miles away on the other side of the Pennines. I wonder what George is thinking as he watches his mum and home disappear into the big black hole.
There she goes, George.
For much of its length, the tunnel is barely just wider than the boat, and it's by no means straight, so it takes a fair bit of concentration to drive the boat through. There's also long stretches where the ceiling is very low, so you're stooped over with a very limited view. The 2 volunteers seem nice enough, but I've only just met them, and now I'm about to spend a couple of hours in a dark confined space with them. It would be fair to say that I'm feeling fairly apprehensive at this point. If you don't have a narrowboat and want to visit the tunnel, you have a couple of options. You can take a ride on one of the volunteer-run trip boats, which last from 30 minutes to 2 hours, or you can now go on a guided canoe tour into the tunnel. This is actually the first time I've ever driven the boat through a tunnel. In fact, I've rarely been a passenger on the boat in a tunnel. Given the option, I'm much happier walking over the top, but this is probably my last chance to travel through the Standage Tunnel, and because I know George would be happier walking over the top, my only option is to drive, so that Michael can walk with George. It's not actually the driving that's the problem, it's the thought of being stuck in the middle of a hill during a tunnel collapse. This first section of the tunnel is lined with the original bricks, but the surface of the tunnel wall will change often as we travel through the different strata. In places, the original brick lining is supported by thicker brick arches. There's also stretches lined with newer engineering bricks. About half of the tunnel is open to bare rock face, and in other areas the walls are lined with sprayed concrete. While most of the tunnel is just 7 foot wide, there are sections where it widens out. The chaperones are sat on the lockers on either side of the stern, while I'm stood at the tiller. One of them periodically stands up, I assume to stretch his legs. Unfortunately, when he does this, his head goes right into my field of vision, and my view becomes even more restricted. Stupidly, the people pleaser in me doesn't say anything the first time he does this, and then I feel too embarrassed to say anything on every subsequent time. Despite this, I only bumped the side of the boat once on the whole trip, and if you don't believe me, or if you just want to watch the passage in real time, I've uploaded the full video on our second channel. So the Standage Tunnel is on the Huddersfield Narrow Canal, which crosses the Pennines between the towns of Huddersfield in West Yorkshire and Ashton-under-Lyne in Greater Manchester. On the east side of the canal, there's 42 locks from Huddersfield to the summit at Marsden, and on the west side, there's 32 locks climbing from Ashton-under-Lyne to the summit in Diggle. The Standage Tunnel was dug at the summit level to link both sides of the canal, and while the tunnel is just over 3 miles long, the summit pound is actually 4.5 miles in length in total. Without the tunnel, up to 120 additional locks would have been needed to complete the canal, and so whilst digging the 3-mile tunnel wasn't an easy prospect, it was definitely the preferable solution. The Standage Tunnel is famously the longest, deepest and highest canal tunnel in Britain. It's 5.2 kilometres or 3.25 miles long, it's 636 feet below the surface, and it's also 642 feet above sea level. The summit pound of the Huddersfield Narrow Canal was actually dug a little deeper than the rest of the canal, so it could store a greater quantity of water and act as a bit of a reservoir to help supply the locks below. It really is an incredible feat of engineering completed over 200 years ago. I wonder what the workers digging out the spoil or laying the bricks back then would make of diesel boats chugging through the tunnel for fun today. The building of the Huddersfield Narrow Canal was authorised back in 1794 during a period of time that's now often referred to as Canal Mania. The construction of the tunnel began almost immediately after the canal was authorised, and the engineer Benjamin Outram was tasked with overseeing the build. It was originally thought that the canal would take just 5 years to complete. However, it took much longer than that, and as the tunnel goes straight through the solid rock of the Pennine Hills, it was always going to be difficult. Workers excavated rock using picks, shovels and explosives, which made it quite dangerous as well. In addition to that, there was the added complication of water seeping into the tunnel during construction. It was decided that the tunnel would be dug from both ends, and unfortunately it was discovered that initially the Diggle end was being dug significantly higher than the Marsden end. Correcting this mistake not only caused delays, but it was also very difficult and costly. It took a year to complete just 150 yards of excavation, and the project faced real danger of being abandoned. Benjamin Outram eventually resigned from the project, and Thomas Telford took over the oversight. More money needed to be raised to finish the tunnel, so once the rest of the canal had been completed, boats could start using it to carry cargo, and horses would transport the goods over the Pennines to bridge the gap between Marsden and the transshipment warehouse in Dobcross. As well as being dug from both ends, shafts were made at various points along the route so that even more progress could be made. Material was dug out and then lifted up through the shafts to the surface. Linking all the sections is what caused the tunnel to end up with so many kinks and bends. In fact, if course corrections hadn't been made, the tunnel sections wouldn't have linked up at all. We're now about halfway through the tunnel, and if I speed up the footage, you'll be able to see quite a significant bend here. Despite all of the issues with the construction, the Standage Tunnel finally opened in 1811, and the route across the Pennines on the Huddersfield Narrow Canal was complete. The issues didn't stop once the canal had opened though. For the next 30 years, about 40 boats would use the tunnel every day, but passage was slow. To save money, the tunnel had been built without a towpath, so this meant that the horses had to be led over the top, and boats had to be legged through by official canal company leggers. A lot of the tunnel is lined with brick, but where the surface is bare rock, it's quite uneven, and this would have made the job of legging much harder. As there's very few places where boats could pass inside the tunnel, the traffic had to be managed so that boats would only travel in one direction at a time. Inevitably, this caused quite a bottleneck at each end of the tunnel, with boats then queuing to go down the locks as well. The size of the boat that could use the tunnel was also restricted, and there was competition from the Rochdale Canal, which was a wide canal and so able to attract much bigger boats. Despite all these issues, the canal was relatively successful, if only for a very short period of time. The views on the top of the tunnel are stunning. Unfortunately for Michael and George, today is not the best day to see them.
So this is our visibility. There's some definite scenery around here. Somewhere. You impressed, George? I'm impressed. Let's keep going.
There's actually 4 tunnels running parallel through the Pennines between Marsden and Diggle. The 1 canal tunnel and then 3 railway tunnels. The canal tunnel is the oldest of the 4 and the longest. During the construction of the railway tunnels, cross tunnels or adits were built to link the new tunnels with the canal tunnel, and then some of the material that was being dug out could be removed by boats on the canal. 2 of the tunnels are disused single-track railway tunnels, and the last is for a double-track railway line that is still in use today. In fact, if you're lucky with your timing, it is possible to see a train passing through the adits from the canal. The canal tunnel is actually the deepest of the 4 tunnels, and so it acts as a bit of a drain for the other tunnels, and so depending on how much rain there's been, it can be really damp down here. It's a familiar story, but the railway proved to be too much competition, and slowly use of the canal declined. In 1921, the last commercial boat to use the tunnel made its passage, the last toll was collected in 1937, and the canal was officially closed in 1944. The last boat to travel through the tunnel before restoration was the Ailsa Craig, who limped through in 1948. The canal's lock gates were then removed in 1950, but a boat was kept on the summit level to allow for inspection and for some maintenance. Eventually, parts of the roof began to collapse inside the tunnel and navigation was no longer possible, and it stayed that way for 50 years. In the 1960s and 70s, talk of reopening the Huddersfield Narrow Canal began, and the project became known as the Impossible Restoration for good reason. Some sections of the tunnel had to be stabilised with metre-long bolts through the rock face. Other sections were lined with mesh and then sprayed with concrete, and this further reduced the width of the tunnel, further reducing the size of the boat that could use it. There was also the matter of removing 10,000 tonnes of silt and 3,000 tonnes of fallen rock. As I mentioned, the summit pound is deeper than the rest of the canal, and so the silt was really deep in places. On the 1st of May 2001, over 50 years since the last boat made its passage, the tunnel was opened again. Initially, boats were towed through the tunnel in convoy by an electric tug. This is because the diesel fumes from multiple boats would make the air dangerous to breathe. Since March 2009, boats have been allowed to travel under their own power, with a few safety measures in place, such as the onboard chaperone and the companion vehicle, and time passages to keep diesel fumes low. We first took Perseverance through the Standard Channel back in 2019, but we were travelling in the opposite direction from Diggle to Marsden. On reaching the end of that passage, we collected our 20th silver propeller location. If you don't know what a silver propeller location is, it's basically a list of places on the waterways of the UK that are at risk of being lost if more boats don't visit them. The Inland Waterways Association came up with the Silver Propeller Challenge to encourage boaters to use more of these lesser visited waterways. There's over 40 silver propeller locations on the connected waterways, and you need to visit just 20 to complete the challenge. I've also made a map of the silver propeller locations, so if you want to complete the challenge, you can tick off the locations as you travel. We're really close to Diggle now, and the end of the tunnel. In fact, this was once the end of the tunnel. In 1894, railway tracks were constructed over the line of the canal, and so the tunnel had to be extended by 200 yards. You can see the metal supports above where the extension was constructed. It took us 1 hour and 38 minutes to make the passage. I was quite impressed with how few times I actually hit the side, and the chaperones were very kind about my driving too. It did take an awful lot of concentration though, and I'm utterly exhausted afterward, not to mention cold and damp. I must say a big thank you to all the volunteers that support the Standard Channel and make it possible for boaters like us to make this journey.
There we go. First actual scenery on our trip. We are down now to the hills and we can see meters, George. Full meters. It's amazing. Also, Joey's out of the tunnel already. She's called me and he's waiting for us. And George doesn't want to go. Hello, horsies. How are you doing? Unimpressed as usual. Well, while George and I are walking, Joe's down in the tunnel. It's been about an hour and 20 minutes since she left, and George and I have gotten lost because we're up here in the expansive views of the Pennines. George and me both suitably extremely impressed with all of the beautiful scenery that we can see all around us. Certainly not missing anything by going through the tunnel. This is that bit Joe's always told me about on her trips over, how gorgeous it is up here. And I am impressed. George has been here before, of course, so he's a little bit bored, but I can certainly see the miles and miles and miles of inlet from above. It's stunning here.